"Oh, hello there," said Sir Miller, rapidly switching from incensed at Nixie to interested in Adam in a moment. "Where'd you find this treasure, Nixie?" I stammered Nixie, clearly trying to process the now violent situation. "Tell you what, let him work for me, and I'll wipe away all 20,000 credits. He's got a spirit. I mean, look at him. He'd be a regular son of hell," said Sir Miller, happily gesturing between Adam and Nixie. "Sorry, Sir Miller, not interested," Adam replied with a snarl, pressing the blade into Liara's neck with enough force to draw blood and a deep intake of breath from the woman. "You have two options. You can leave and wait to collect the debt until after my pod is done keeping these two noble assholes safe, or this can get bloody. I kill everyone in this room and nobody's happy." "By sham, my husband would have loved you. You're definitely built different. But Varam, may he rest, always stood ready to fight on my behalf," said Sir Miller, completely ignoring his ultimatum and turning to Nixie. "You need to keep his ass safe, you hear? If I hear that he died protecting you, I will contribute your debts and bring them before your mother and the Imperial Gambling Commission." "But tell me, Adam, why are you protecting the kind of woman who can't pay her bills?" "Just the next mission," replied Adam, releasing pressure on the dagger suddenly, as he grew ever more confused at the situation. "Someone tried killing the wrong people and my unit got pulled. Why?" "Oh, the wrong people, is it?" She gestured for the other massive woman next to her to leave the room, and Adam withdrew the dagger from Liara's neck, a small trickle of blue blood trailing to her collarbone. He then aggressively shoved the large woman forward, sending her sprawling past Sir Miller, who laughed bodily as she watched her companion flail and impact the ground. Liara jumped to her feet, eyes alight with rage, intent to charge at him, only for him to draw the handgun from his holster just below and to the right of his belly button, and point it directly at her skull. Sir Miller clapped a hand across her taller companion's chest and nodded for the door. Liara clearly considered her options for a moment, but complied eventually. "I'll put your debt on hold for now, Nixie, but you better have the debt in full by the time your life is settled again," she sighed, and put on a genuine smile for Adam. "Adam, it was lovely to meet you, and I sincerely hope we meet again under less unfortunate circumstances." She spun on her heels and left the room, shutting the door behind her as she went. "Adam, I'm so sorry, I didn't expect—" "Save it," he barked. "We're leaving." He jerked her up from her seat, pulling his wrist-mounted comms device up to his face and pressing the button. 2-1, this is 1-1. Halo is leaving. Clear path the door. Possible hostiles in the area. "Received. Moving." Slip's voice came over the device. Adam pulled the door open slowly and stuck his head outside in the hallway, finding it vacated for the time being. He held Nix's wrist in one hand and the pistol behind his back with the other, moving quickly down the stairs and through the crowd, making eye contact with Slip and Cell, who stood by the doorway. The two exited scant seconds before he did, moving into the crowded city street, a last sidewalk. Adam beelined for the parked town car with his charge in tow, walking down the steps quickly. The air cracked thunderously, and the force on his left shoulder sent him crashing into Nixie. The pain spiked through his armor. He looked at the burned hole through the street clothes, leading directly to the armor underneath, which only looked slightly charged. "Sniper, get cover!" he yelled, as he jumped to a crouch, dragging the panic woman with him, Crouch sprinting to cover behind what he hoped was the engine block of an alien car, before more laser rounds snapped the air and burned small, red, glowing divots into the concrete. "You have eyes on the shooter?" he yelled at Slip and Cell, who were taking cover behind a low-seated alloy wall, and another car respectfully. "No," replied Cell, opening the door of the car and retrieving an HSC-9. "Cell, take Nixie. Me and Slip will handle the sniper and try to get intel. You just get her out of here," he said, slapping Nixie on the shoulder and pointing for the diminutive woman. Cell tossed the carbine to Slip, who stood from cover and caught the weapon, replacing a pistol in his holster as she kneeled back down. A round charred the inside corner of the wall that she was hiding behind, giving Adam a decent idea of the hostile's position. "Slip, doorway of the club is our 6 o'clock, alright?" he yelled in her direction, earning a nod. "Those shots are coming from somewhere between 12 to 2. I'm across the street. See if you can get an angle on them." He flicked the switch on his wrist, feeling the now familiar sensation of his sprint kit activating and tightening around his legs. He bolted from cover, feeling the heat of ionizing air snap over his shoulder as he crossed the street in scant moments, taking cover behind a car. "Found him," said Slip over the radio, and Adam looked at the small clump of buildings that would fit the angle of the shots, only to see a section of wall melt and catch fire above him. "Fuck, Slip, what the hell did you load in that thing?" he yelled, popping out of cover to put several shots that barely carved a divot out of the wall for the couple that missed over the 30 yards to his target. "Wasn't me," she replied loudly. "No one shoots up my bar but me!" came a familiar voice from behind and above him. He couldn't help but grin as he watched Samilla firing an absurdly large rifle from the roof of the club they just left, braced on a bipod and wearing a painted marine helmet. The weapon jerked in her arms as she sent another air-ripping shot into the window that was presumably being used by the sniper. "I thought this has had tits! Get the fuck in there! I'll cover!" she yelled from the roof, gesturing at the fighters on the ground. Slip jumped a solid 10 meters over a car, landing next to Adam, who instinctively moved through the ground floor doorway. Together they stacked up on the squat, wide 4-story building, only to hear a rapid volley of shots come from above them. Adam looked back at their cover, watching the rifle fall behind the low parapet of the bar. "On me, we clear each room. One inside, one covers the halls. Let's move," he said, putting 3 rounds into the latch of the door and kicking it open with a donkey kick. Hearing no fire, he pushed into the building, pistol raised. He saw a woman in a skin-tight green suit and a round-brimmed hat come around the corner at the end of the atrium they just entered, and put 7 consecutive shots into roughly the same spot in her chest, collapsing her to the floor. "Control," he said, switching to aiming in the direction she'd come from, as Slip put 2 rounds into her skull, turning her soft lighter skin into a mushy pile of charred flesh and pulp bone. Satisfied that the small atrium was clear, they pushed up to the entryway that the woman had exited from. Adam stopped for a moment to holster his pistol and pick up her carbine, an unfamiliar model to him. "Ever seen one of these before?" he asked. "Yeah, it's the R7 MCW. It's an Alliance weapon," replied Slip, looking at the rifle in her hands. "Why the fuck are our assassins using the other guy's tech?" "No clue. That's a question for after we clear the building," Slip replied, motioning Adam forward. They arrived at a stairwell shortly after, moving up the landings in a slow and practiced manner. "Just like Cheyenne, eh?" Adam asked softly, as they sat on the second-floor doorway. "Except for less nukes and more hostiles," she whispered, holding an angle on the stairs. Adam pushed into the floor first, finding it to be open office space, and completely devoid of personnel. It was technically Shell, after all, so he assumed they just weren't at work that day. He took the long walk to his left, clearing the corner before refocusing on the room at large, intent on clearing the only other doorway on the floor, was led into a large square room, most likely an office of some kind. He pushed through the desks and set up on the outside of the door. Repeating the same process as earlier, he heel-kicked the door inward, and slowly pied a sharp angle into and around the doorway, preferring not to enter without at least a second man. Once he was satisfied that he'd cleared every aspect of the 5-meter by 5-meter room, he pushed against the door and cleared the corner of least resistance, flipping rapidly to face the door, pushing it aside and clearing the opposite corner. He exited the room shortly after, satisfied that a 7-foot murder tank couldn't hide in any of the small spaces, and returned to the doorway that Slip was holding outside. "One coming out," he called. "Move!" He opened the door and stacked on Slip, having her take the lead for the next floor. This floor contained the window that the enemy sniper had been firing from. They heard the rapid cracks of the weapon firing above them as they reached the floor. Adam nodded to Slip as they reached the door, opening the door and moving into a hallway, flanked with office doors on either side of them. They slowly pushed down the hall, breaching and clearing each room as they went. Adam took a moment to poke his head out a window and waved to Samilla, who he could thankfully see returning fire at the roof above them at eye level. She caught his eyes, nodded, and ducked behind her parapet wall, having shifted several meters from where she previously was. If he had to hazard a guess, she was returning fire in an "I'm up, she sees me, I'm down" style, and changing location for each shot she placed. He was satisfied that no more rounds would rip through their floor, and returned to Slip to stack on the next room. He passed by a still smouldering hole in the wall, and traced it at both ends to sunlight, ripping a 3-inch diameter hole cleanly through the building. "Fucking hell, what kind of rifle is that?" he asked absentmindedly, as they pulled out of the next room. "If I had to hazard a guess, probably a KPF-03. They're outdated, fucking heavy and hard to maneuver, but they can rip right through an exo with the right shot placement. Back in the day, they were used as in-place anti-exo weapons." "How the fuck did she get one?" he asked, as he burst into the next room, finding the body of the sniper, a long rifle with a severed arm still attached to the grip lying next to her mangled corpse. Lifeless eye gazing at the ceiling, with one half of her face practically deleted from existence, Adam took in the scene. "No idea, but remind me not to fuck with her." "Ditto." "The fuck?" Slip asked, as he pushed out into the hall, clearing the rest of the rooms as they went. Adam continued to hear the rapid fire from the roof as they neared ever closer in the stairwell. Slip, I know this is a bad idea, but you need to clear the 4th floor without me. I gotta get whatever that is taken down, he said, as they sat on the 4th floor door. Adam, I'm going with you, she replied, clearly angry at the prospect of splitting up. If you don't clear this floor, we might both die when they flank us. You do this, I do that. We can handle it. He sat her shoulder and continued with the alien carbine raised, having figured out the safety before entering the 2nd floor with Slip's help. He found the roof access door slightly ajar, and activated his jump kit reflexively before he slammed the door open, sighting a woman standing behind a large weapon on a tripod, the source of the rapid shots. He sent 2 rounds into her chest and skull, splitting her head apart in a spray of roasted viscera. He was tackled to the ground from his right, which he neglected to clear by a hard force, sending him to the ground with a blow that knocked the wind out of him. Just fucking let us! Came a decidedly male voice from atop him, as he twisted around under the significantly lighter weight than expected. He angled his booted feet onto the torso of a snarling Sholvanti male, and used the jump kit to launch him several dozen meters into the air, and off the side of the building, screaming at the top of his lungs as he cartwheeled through the air. Slip, he yelled into the radio on his wrist. Rooftop is clear, 2 neutralized. Strap on for... He was cut off as Slip burst out from the door, breathing heavily and covered in blue blood. Holy fuck, Slip, you okay? He asked, beginning to sprint in her direction. Not mine, she got out between gasping breaths. Halo Guard team, do not return to the manor. Shamlantal is compromised, came Grimm's voice, staticky over the radio, with audible shots ringing in the background. Shamlantal was the code phrase for the Duchess when used over the radio, apparently being dissatisfied with Adam's suggestion to use human words for important names, and demanding that she be referred to over the comms by what he learned was the Sholvanti High Goddess, and believed ancestor of the Empress. Thankfully, Nixie had been far more accommodating for Adam, and seemed to like the word Halo, as she had repeated it several times happily after he suggested it. Adam wandered over to the large weapon on the tripod as Slip acknowledged the message. It had a large squared-off receiver, a barrel ran through dozens of heat sinks, and a small pile of 8-inch by 6-inch by 4-inch boxes piled at the base of the weapon. A single handle with a trigger protruded out the back of the weapon, without a stock of any sort. Hey, Slip, what can you tell me about this? He called over his shoulder, as she audibly jogged up behind him. It's a MX3 GP2, an Alliance medium repeating laser system. Why? Because we're gonna need a truck, he said, picking up the 30-pound Elise system on his tripod, and gesturing for her to grab the box magazines. A fucking car would be faster if we're doing what I think we're doing. What is it you think we're doing? He asked, whistling happily as he carried the alien equivalent of the 240B he'd used in Afghanistan all those years ago. Disregarding orders and running to our team's rescue, hence why we need to move fast, so let's steal a car instead. Slip? He paused for dramatic effect as he opened the stairwell door. Have you ever heard of a technical?